Hi, Mark Reedman, Art Supper Hunter here, and today I'm in conversation with Morrigan Raine, who is a musician, singer, songwriter and producer based in Muswellbrook. Welcome, Morrigan.
Thank you very much for having me.
I thought we might start with a bit about your background, where you were born.
Sure. I was born in Ukraine, and when I was about 4, I started learning piano. This is what my parents tell me is from birth, I was really interested in singing, and especially as a newborn baby, I used to sing all the time, apparently. So when I was about 3, my mum started teaching me piano, really basic things because she couldn't play herself. So she taught me different notes and just a basic scale, and she saw that I was really, really interested. And so when I was 4, she took me to a music teacher, and that's when it started.
And so she was obviously musical.
Well, she really liked music, but she couldn't play herself. She never thought that she was talented enough. And it's really, really sad. But she wanted to encourage me to try. And because I was musical and I had such an interest in singing and dancing and, I used to always pretend with little toys, little guitars and microphones and just put on little concerts for people when I was a toddler. So she thought that was really cool and she encouraged me. Yeah.
And I read somewhere you, when you were 6, entered a competition and you won a prize.
Yeah, it was a composition competition, and basically what we had to do, we weren't even given a theme. We were just put in a room. We were kind of put into separate rooms and kind of, quote unquote, locked into these rooms for about 20 minutes. And we were supposed to come up with a composition and also write it down on music sheet. And I did, and I won.
It's amazing. And forgive my ignorance, but at that stage, where was the Ukraine politically?
So when I was born, I'm really, really bad with these things, so don't quote me on this, but maybe when I was born or straight after I was born, the Soviet Union fell apart, and it was a little bit, I don't remember any unrests or anything like that, but I remember having food stamps and not having common food items. So some of my relatives were working in hospitals and things like that. So it was considered, you could have connections kind of. And so they used to bring me different foods just for me because I was little, me and my brother. Little things like, cottage cheese and a bit of milk and things that we couldn't have freely. So that's the only kind of struggle that I remember as a little child. Yeah. It was pretty interesting.
And so how long did you study classical piano for?
So I started when I was 4, and then when I was about 10, almost 11, we moved to Israel. And I continued to study there, and I graduated from Music Academy Conservatorium. It doesn't have a proper name here, but I'd say it's a conservatorium at the same time as high school. So, yeah.
And if I can ask, why did your family move to Israel?
So my dad is Jewish, and back in the day, based on what I'm told, is that the anti-Semitism was rising again, and it was really sort of unstable in that way, and people weren't sure what was going to happen, and they didn't want to take the chances after the Second World War. And so people like my dad, who couldn't get into uni back in the day because he was Jewish and that kind of stuff, so he was getting death threats, and people like him were starting to get death threats, and there was all these graffitis and things like that, and so we didn't feel safe. So if you're a Jewish person, by law in Israel, you are entitled to immigrate and get a citizenship status. So that's what we did.
And you continued to study piano there for quite a while?
Yes, so pretty much straight away, my parents didn't want to disrupt my education, so they tried to send me to a conservatorium, and there was one in where I lived, and so I did that. I started doing that straight away pretty much.
And I believe you also served in the army.
Yes. So military service is compulsory in Israel.
Yep.
And when you graduate high school and you're 18, everybody is supposed to go to the army. So that's what I did for 2 years after high school.
And did you get much encouragement at school, sort of, for the musical interests that you had?
In high school, no.
No.
But in music school, yes, absolutely. Yeah, music school was amazing. High school was not amazing at all.
So when you finished high school, where did you go from there?
So I went to the army and I did that for 2 years. And then during that time, well, actually, when I was in my last senior year of high school, I met my husband, who then was just my friend online. And we started talking a lot and we became friends. And so after I finished my army service, we met up and I decided to move to Australia with him.
And where did you land? Muswellbrook?
In Mount Isa, Queensland.
Must have been a bit of a shock.
It was. It was definitely a shock. Coming from a big city, you know, with lots of traffic and public transport and tall buildings, and then I end up in Mount Isa, which was desert, and not much going on. But it was amazing. It was great. I was excited just to be here, and everything felt so different and so cool, and like the people, the language, the fact that we drive on the other side of the road, like everything was amazing and exciting for me.
And
Yeah.
did you have a piano?
No, I didn't have a piano. So a few years later, sorry, not a few, maybe a couple of years later, my husband bought me a Korg keyboard.
Oh, yes.
Because living in Mount Isa, we did our research and it wasn't actually recommended to have a piano because of the climate.
Oh.
So, yeah, it would actually affect the piano really badly. So, you know, the wood, the timber wouldn't do well in that kind of weather conditions. It was too dry, too hot, and then too wet during the wet season, like really humid and hot. So we were told not to do it, just to get a keyboard. So we did our research and we got a really big, proper 88 keys keyboard that, you know, felt like a piano, and that's been with me ever since, actually. It's still going strong.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
And were you playing, did you play at home? Did you sort of play in clubs or?
No, it's always at home, always at home. I actually have a really big stage fright, so I don't play live anymore. I played live when I was playing classical music, and that was terrifying enough. And when I was playing on my own, it was almost unbearable. So I didn't like that at all. But playing in duets or an orchestra was amazing, absolutely amazing. It's a totally different feeling. So I don't play live.
So I believe at some point you actually stopped playing the piano.
I did. For years, it's an interesting thing when you're learning classical music, and I don't know how many people come across this sort of phenomenon, but you're sort of put into this box with classical music, and I didn't like to be in the box, but I was forced to be in the box. And a lot of times I wanted to experiment with learning jazz or learning improvisation and, you know, different things. And because we couldn't afford it, I couldn't do it. And I didn't know how to do it on my own. And back then we didn't have internet. We didn't have that research that we could do today. So I became very, very resentful towards classical music. And my parents were always pushing me to take this further. Like they thought that that was going to become my career as classical pianist. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do classical music. And by the time I finished and I graduated, I was almost traumatized, if I can say that. And I was so resentful. And I said to everybody, I'm never playing this again. I'm never touching the piano again, like ever in my life. I don't want it.
Wow.
And so I just stopped. And so when my husband bought me the keyboard, he was trying to encourage me to try and play again. And I said, you know what? I'm never playing classical music again. I might be experimenting with maybe writing my own stuff, but I'm not good at it. I don't know how to do it. Like, yes, I did it in the past, but it was really cheesy sort of music. I was put down a lot by certain people in my life, not my parents, not them, but, you know, people who were jealous and people who just hated for no reason. And I was kind of put down a lot when people said, you will never be anything great with anything that I write on my own.
Well, that's terrible.
It was really, really terrible. It was so bad for my self-confidence that even now I struggle with it. Every time I write a piece of music and I release it, I have this annoying voice in my head going, this is not good. You know, you're not good enough. You're not supposed to put that out. And so it's really bad. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's terrible.
Yeah.
Well, we think you're wonderful here.
Oh, thank you so much.
So you started writing your own stuff. Were you writing songs? Were you writing instrumentals? What were you writing?
I was writing instrumentals because I was too scared to write lyrics. English is my third language and I want to use it as an excuse, but to be honest, I'm just not great at writing lyrics in any language. I don't think I'm poetic enough. So I was really scared of writing lyrics at first, and so I stuck to instrumentals. I thought, let's just stick to what I know and get the confidence first and then move on to something that's new. And so it kind of progressed slowly, but the lyrics came not long after because I was struggling in my life, in my personal life. I was in such a low spot. And I was like, well, I'm just going to do it. Like, what's the worst that can happen? You know, I'm just going to write lyrics and I'm going to try and keep them vague so that people who know me don't really understand what I'm talking about. So I did that, and then I kind of quickly found out that if you keep it too vague, then that's not good either. People don't connect with it either. So, yeah. But, you know, it's getting better. I'm learning. It's just trial and error.
And you must have moved from Mount Isa down to the Hunter because you ended up going to the music production course at TAFE in Newcastle.
Yes, so when my first child was born, we decided to move to Muswellbrook because we wanted to be close to family. We have family in New South Wales. So we moved down here, and it was great. It was awesome, but I never knew that I could do music professionally. Like I had no clue. And then in 2017, I found out that in Newcastle, in TAFE, there's actually a really great music department with amazing resources. And so I signed up straight away.
I believe it's probably one of the best studios in Australia.
Yes, it's the best in the Southern Hemisphere, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so what were you studying there? What were you doing there?
So I was studying sound production, and I started with Cert 3 and then progressed all the way to advanced diploma. And basically it involves a little bit of theory and live audio and studio work, a lot of studio work, and post-production as well. So Atmos and movies and that kind of stuff.
And were you using the studio to record?
I did, yes. I used the studio to record and to produce and for my own purposes as well, like for learning purposes, obviously. But
Yeah.
I loved being there and I tried to be there as much as I could. And so I never missed a day. And then I stayed late after school if I could, just taking advantage of every single minute that I could.
And you've now finished that course?
Yes, I finished last year in December.
Which is sort of the connection that you have with Arts Upper Hunter because, to cut a very long story short, you wrote and recorded 2 dance tracks for our Dance Craze video comp.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us a bit about the strange story behind that?
That was so amazing and so funny, and I still I love these songs. But yeah, basically one of my teachers said to me one day, he actually messaged me kind of late at night, dinner time, sort of after dinner time, and he said, "Oh, quick, I need 3 songs by tomorrow." And I said, well,
just 3.
Just 3. And I was like, oh my God, what's happening? And he said, well, there's a thing and you need to do it urgently. And I'm going to probably try and ask someone else, but I know you can do it. And this was one of the tactics that, if people push me and put me on the spot, then I will deliver. And so I was like, okay, challenge accepted. And no, I didn't deliver 3 songs by tomorrow, but I did 2.
Yeah.
So that was pretty good.
And they were great. And they are great. And we'll still be using them in another little project we're doing this year. So can you talk a bit about where you record now that you've finished the course?
I record everything at home. So I set up a home studio in one of my spare bedrooms and I've converted that into a studio. So I have clients coming to record and I record all my own stuff. And so I record, produce, mix, do everything on my own in that little studio.
And what sort of gear do you use?
I use Cubase as my software, and I have my Korg keyboard, obviously, and I have 2 pairs of studio monitors. One is the Yamaha HS8s, and the other ones are little ones. They're the Yamaha MSP3, I believe. And I actually use a pair of PA speakers. They're Behringer Eurolive speakers as a reference, just to see what things would sound like on just a commercial kind of speaker. And my room is not properly acoustically treated, so it makes it really, really hard. But I did put a few panels here and there, things that I could afford at this time. And I'm also using a lot of calibration software as well, just to try and make up for the fact that it's not acoustically treated.
So where do you get, and I've listened to quite a lot of your music, where do you get your string sounds and your percussion sounds? Because you use a lot of orchestral sounds.
Yeah. I just use plugins. I just use virtual instruments a lot because obviously I don't have access to orchestras and people, and I don't have budget to hire musicians. No. So I basically try to do everything on my own. So instruments like piano, I don't have a real piano, but at least I can play. So that kind of puts the humanity in it. But I also have, I'm trying to learn different instruments. I'm trying to be self-sufficient if I can't afford session musicians. So
as in actual instruments?
Actual instruments.
Right.
So I'm trying to learn guitar and bass, and I'm playing tin whistle as well. And so I'm just trying these percussion instruments, so different things that I can do. But then orchestras and things like that, like they just have to be virtual instruments at this point.
And how do you, because I know you're a mum, how do you balance your work, musical work, and your family life?
Not very well. I don't sleep much. Actually, that is a real problem that I'm trying to address at the moment. There has been a very long time of me just not going to bed for ages, and I would just stay up and make music until 3 and 4 in the morning, and then pay for it the next day. And that's not good. Obviously, that affects everything: physical health, mental health. And in the music industry, there's already a problem with mental health anyway. So, and me specifically. So I'm trying to not make that any worse. So, choosing between going to bed early or creative time is really, really hard to do. Yeah. But, with 3 kids, that's the only time you have, really.
So are your children musical? Are they interested? Have they got the bug?
My eldest one is. She's 12, and she has been really interested in learning the piano. And so I've helped her quite a bit, but she's very, very smart and seems to have really good pitch and hearing. So she picks up things on her own. She knows very basic notes and things like that, but she just works it out by herself just by listening. So, and she can carry a tune like a melody and stuff. So she's got a really good hearing, and she can sing, but she's a bit embarrassed, but as you are when you're a teenager, almost teenager. And my little ones are not very interested at all.
Not yet, anyway.
At this point, not yet. But I'm hoping, they grow up being surrounded by instruments and music, playing all the time, and seeing the studio. And so I'm hoping that they will be.
So given all the above, if you're in the car and you get an idea for a song, what happens from there?
I basically try to remember it as best as I can, and as soon as I arrive in my destination, I will record it into my phone, into the voice recorder.
Of course, yes.
Yeah. There's a lot of little audio clips that I have on my phone that kind of go, okay, well, so this is going to go, no, and it's going to be in this key and this tempo, and so there's a lot of that going on. And
I have to ask, it's the old question, lyrics first or music first? Bit of both?
It's honestly, it's different every time. It just depends on how I feel. Like if there's, for example, a bit of insomnia happening, and I will just start writing lyrics, because then I can at least get it out of my head and get to sleep. But a lot of times if I'm in front of my computer and I'll just start creating things and then be like, oh, that'll be nice to write lyrics for that particular piece of music. But lately I haven't been doing lyrics at all. I've just kind of moved away from lyrics a bit.
Yeah.
I just feel like I can't express things as well as I want to at this point. And so I try to stick to instrumentals more at this stage. having said that, I'm also producing other people. So working with other people kind of fills that need for me, people who do songs with lyrics.
And who are they? Who are those people?
So local artists, one girl in particular that I'm producing her album at the moment, she lives in Newcastle, and I actually met her through TAFE as well, and she is a incredibly talented artist, not only in music, but she also paints, and she also writes stories, and just all around very, very talented girl. And so she wants to record this album, but she doesn't have the technical knowledge yet. So she brings me ideas of lyrics and melody, and then I basically produce the track for her. So arrangement and anything that might need, changing, or just throwing ideas out there, and then she just says yes or no. And yeah, it's a really amazing and rewarding process.
Yeah. And do you seek that work, or does it just sort of come your way?
I am not very good at actually putting myself out there yet professionally, but I should be, because that is the type of work that I want to be doing. Yeah. But I also, I want to be doing so many things at the same time. I just actually very recently, I finished a mentorship program through Screenworks Australia. So I was just mentored by Amanda Brown, who is an amazing composer in Sydney. So I want to get into film scoring as well.
Yeah, because that's one of the things whenever I listen to your music, I think, wow, this stuff would be great in film. It's so atmospheric.
Oh, thank you. That's my favourite type of music to do, actually, is kind of film type, soundtrack, atmospheric sort of music.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully that'll happen.
And who are some of your artists who have influenced your work, would you say? Have you got some faves?
Yeah, I'm one of those people who is very, I want to say uneducated when it comes to music, because I don't, so you have to understand, sort of growing up in post-Soviet Union world, we weren't allowed to have any Western music.
Of course, yeah.
So we weren't listening to anything from the outside. And then when we moved to Israel, I was already 11 years old. So I missed out on all these childhood, must watches, kind of like kids programs and kids films and like even cartoons and stuff like that. So I didn't have any of that. So when we moved and we were incredibly poor, I got a birthday present and somebody bought me a Whitney Houston album.
Wow.
And an old like secondhand Walkman. And that's what I listened to for ages, and I didn't know English, so I sang along, making up gibberish words like any other kid who doesn't know the language. Like it was just awesome. And
So what were you speaking at that stage?
well, I was speaking Russian, and then we moved to Israel, and I learned how to speak Hebrew.
Of course, yeah.
But we didn't start learning English until high school.
Oh.
So I didn't know any English. And so I listened to Whitney Houston, and I just connected to the music and the voice, and I didn't care about the language, I was like, it'd be nice to know what she says, but not necessary. So I kind of sang along, making up gibberish words, and that's what I did for ages. And then at some point, my brother, who was still living in Ukraine, he sent me a cassette of Enigma.
Ah, yes.
And my mum loved Enigma, and so we listened to that on repeat, like all the time. This was just one particular album.
It's from memory, that's very moody. It's almost a bit religious, is that?
Yeah.
Is that
He used samples of Gregorian chants in there, which he got in trouble for, which I didn't know at the time. He did, because copyright, and like they didn't want that to be used in that context, so he got in trouble. But I really just connected to that, just the atmospheric and like the mystical sort of vibe of that was really, really speaking to me. So I listened to that for ages. And I think when I was about 15 or something, my friend gave me a Guns N' Roses album. So again, I didn't listen to many things at all growing up. And then when the internet came along and there was option to listen to a lot of things, then I did. And I got into metal, lots of metal, and I was in a black metal band.
Oh, really?
And, yeah. Yeah, I went through a very long metal period, black metal and death metal, and
playing
the keys.
Playing the keys.
Playing the keys, yeah.
That's very unmetal.
Well, it is, because it's very like you play strings and you play, it's like melodic, sort of atmospheric black metal, and we had a band, and it was amazing. We didn't play live, we didn't get to that stage, but we had rehearsals religiously every week, and we were pretty good, but we never got a chance to play live. So and then after that there was like all kinds of different music. I'm really eclectic in what I listen to, but in saying that, I don't listen to a lot because there's so much going on in my head musically. I struggle to receive more information, like if people suggest to listen to some artist or something, I always go, yeah, this is great. I'll put it on my list of things to do. And then I just never get to it because I just can't. It's just too much information. So everything I do now is basically what's happening in my own head. And it might be influenced by like elements of electronic music, Enigma and Spongle and things like that. People that I really admire. But I don't keep up with any current stuff, and I don't know many of the classics that I should know as a musician. I just don't know them, and it doesn't really bother me, to be honest.
No, and it doesn't seem to have affected your work. So what are you up to now, and what are your plans?
So I'm still releasing my own music pretty consistently, although I'm getting very, very critical lately. So the more knowledge you get, the harder it is to release things, I find. But yeah, I'm releasing my own stuff. I have just finished writing music, so a film score for a short animation film. And that was a really, really cool experience. And hopefully this will be submitted to some sort of competition later on. And then I'm producing other people. Like I said, the girl that I'm producing her album, and I'm collaborating with another musician from the UK who remixed one of my tracks, and working on another one. And I've just been connecting through Instagram to just local artists, like in Newcastle and well, not just local, but mainly, over here, and trying to collaborate with these people as much as I can. Actually, I have a person from India who sent me some tracks to do something with, like singing and guitar playing, and there's another guy from Pakistan that wants me to produce his album as well. So there's a lot of things going on, a lot of projects going on.
Yeah.
I'm also working with another friend who does he does like anxiety sort of coaching. He has this amazing business that he runs, and so he's doing podcasts, and so I'm editing the podcasts and designing the music and stuff like that. So there's a lot of and in the meantime trying to do my own stuff, YouTube and Instagram and social media stuff. Yeah.
And finally, what advice would you give to a young musician?
You need to be really careful with who you listen to. There will be a lot of people who will have advice, and you never know which advice is good and is coming from the right place. This is what I've learned with my experience. It's a lot of people will give you the wrong advice, and you will listen to it, and it'll pull you down, basically. And don't be afraid to go for your dreams, because people who say you can't do it, they believe that they can't do it, not that you can't do it. So they themselves can't see themselves doing it. So don't let anybody stop you. Anybody.
So what sort of bad advice have you had?
Just people saying, oh, you're not ready, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. But if you're not doing it, how are you going to learn?
Yeah.
If you're not releasing music and learning from mistakes, how are you going to learn? Yeah, and a lot of people saying things like, you should be listening to this, you should be doing this. Well, no, I don't want to. I want to do what is in my head and what I believe is true. And yes, I will listen to critical feedback, constructive criticism, but not to somebody who goes, oh yeah, that's just not great, because it's very subjective. So always have to know the right reason for why it's not good. What can you improve? Not just because someone said don't like it.
Yeah. Okay, well, look, it's been a great pleasure, Morrigan. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.